All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back for another session of Drop Everything and Read. We're actually getting into part two of The Hate You Give, as you can see by our little title page here. 5 weeks after it. I wish we were together so I could ask and hear your answers out loud, but what is the it that we're talking about? 5 weeks after. That's right, the main catalyst or the inciting incident of our plot where Khalil was shot. So this is 5 weeks after the actual incident where Khalil died. So that is our inciting incident. When we look at our plot graph, if you think our plot graph is that basic line, the inciting incident is down here, and that is the actual shooting of Khalil. Our reading yesterday just ended with a playful dinner. Star and Maverick picked up food from Reuben's and they went home. And as we know, Lisa, the mom, casually mentioned that she had another job interview at the hospital where Pam, Uncle Carlos's wife, is a surgeon. So Star's mom may have a new job as well. So Pam recommended Lisa. The job would mean 6 figures, as we were talking about yesterday. And much to Star's surprise, Maverick says he and Lisa will look at houses near the hospital. So Maverick is now thinking about leaving Garden Heights. Lisa's new job would be a ticket out of the neighborhood, a chance for the entire family to start over, away from the dangerous day-to-day life. But who are we most concerned with? Who might be held back? That's right, 7 risks being held back by his ties to Garden Heights because he's a teenager, remember? And he's got a lot of friends, and he's in danger of falling into that cycle that keeps families trapped, that cycle of violence and away from opportunity and security. So we're going to find out what happens next with that. Will Lisa get the job? Will Star continue to speak out and use the power of her voice? All those questions we've had all the way along. And again, speaking of questions, our guiding questions for today's session: how has Star's identity in the neighborhood changed? And how does Star fight back in her interview? So again, we get that foreshadowing that there's another interview about to happen. For those of you lucky enough to have a book at home, we are on chapter 16, which is page 281. And for those of us here, obviously, as you can see, 124. So let's see how things evolve today. Miss Ofra arranged for me to do an interview with one of the national news programs today, exactly a week before I testify before the grand jury next Monday. It's around 6 o'clock when the limo that the news program sent arrives. My family's coming with me. I doubt my brothers will be interviewed, but Seven wants to support me. Sakani claims he does too, but really, he's hoping he'll get discovered somehow with all those cameras around. So again, wanting to be that either YouTube celebrity or just recognized. My parents told him about everything. As much as he gets on my nerves, it was sweet when he gave me a handmade card that said, "Sorry." Until I opened it, there was a drawing of me crying over Khalil, and I had devil horns. Sakani said he wanted it to be real. Little butthole, as it says there. So an interesting depiction. He says, sorry that you went through this, but then Star with devil horns. We all head out to the limo. Some neighbors watch curiously from their porches and yards. Mama made all of us, including Daddy, dress up like we're going to Christ's temple. Not quite Easter formal, but not diverse church casual. She says we're not going to have the news people thinking we're hood rats. So trying again with that code switching or trying to present a more sophisticated front. So putting their best foot forward. So as we're walking to the car, she's all, when we get there, don't touch anything and only speak when somebody speaks to you. It's yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, or no, ma'am, and no, sir. Do I make myself clear? Yes, ma'am, the 3 of us say. All right now, Star. One of our neighbors calls out. I get that just about every day in the neighborhood now. Word spreading around the garden that I'm the witness. All right now is more than a greeting. It's a simple way people let me know they got my back. The best part, though, it's never, all right now, Big Mav's daughter who works in the store. It's always Star. So now she has her own identity. We leave in the limo. I drum my fingers on my knee as I watch the neighborhood pass by. I've talked to detectives and the DA, and the next week I'll talk to the grand jury. I've talked about that night so much I can repeat it back in my sleep, but the whole world will see this. My phone vibrates in my blazer pocket. A couple of texts from Chris. My mom wants to know what color your prom dress is. Something about the tailor needs to know ASAP. Oh, the junior senior prom is Saturday. I haven't bought a dress. With all this Khalil stuff, I'm not sure I even want to go. Mama said I need to get my mind off things. I said no. She gave me the look. So I'm going to the damn prom. This dictatorship she's on, not cool. I text Chris back. Light blue, he responds. You don't have a dress yet? I've got plenty of time, I write back. Just been busy. It's true. Miss Ofra prepared for me this interview every day after school. Some days we finished early, and I helped out around Just Us for Justice, answered phones, passed out flyers, anything they needed me to do. Sometimes I listened in on their staff meetings as they discussed police reform ideas and the importance of telling the community to protest, not riot. I asked Dr. Davis if Just Us could have a roundtable discussion at Williamson like they do at Garden High. He said he didn't see the need. Chris replies to my prom text. Okay, if you say so. By the way, Vontae says sup. So what's up? About to kill him on Madden. He needs to stop calling me Bieber though. It's too funny. So Devontae is now friends with Chris and they're playing games when Star can't be there. Just going to take a quick sip of my drink. After all that, white boy trying to be black shit, Devontae said after all that white boy trying to be black stuff, Devontae said about Chris, lately he's at Chris's house more than I am. Chris invited him over to play Madden, and all of a sudden, they're bros. According to Devontae, Chris's massive video game collection makes up for the whiteness. So again, having a lot of items or things gives Chris swag to Devontae's eyes, I guess you'd say. Interesting. I told Devontae he's a video game thought, and we know that thought stands for that blank over there. Sometimes we refer to young women who tend to be promiscuous as thoughts. You may have heard this on Jerry Springer. Now they're comparing someone who plays a lot of video games. Instead of sleeping with a lot of guys, they're playing with a lot of video games. That's how they're comparing the two. I told Devontae he's a video game thought. He told me to shut up. We're cool like that, though. We arrive at a fancy hotel downtown. A white guy in a hoodie waits under the awning leading up to the door. He has a clipboard under his arm and a Starbucks cup in his hand. Still, he somehow manages to open the limo door and shake our hands when we get out. John, the producer, it's a pleasure to meet you. He shakes my hand a second time, and let me guess, you're Star. Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having the bravery to do this. What a great opening. Try and build her up right away, because it is an act of bravery and strength to use your voice, because it's a powerful tool. There's that word again, bravery. Brave people's legs don't shake. Brave people don't feel like puking. Brave people sure don't have to remind themselves how to breathe if they think about that night too hard. If bravery is a medical condition, everybody's misdiagnosed me. John leads us through all of these twists and turns, and I'm so glad I'm wearing flats. He can't stop talking about how important the interview is and how much they're going to want to get the truth out there. He's not exactly adding to my bravery. He takes us to the hotel courtyard where some camera operators and other show people are setting up. In the middle of the chaos, the interviewer, Diane Carey, is getting her makeup done. It's weird seeing her in the flesh and not as a bunch of pixels on TV. When I was younger, every single time I spent the night at Nana's house, she made me sleep in one of her long ass nightgowns, say my bedtime prayers for at least 5 minutes, and watch Diane Carey's news report so I could be knowledgeable of the world. Hi, Mrs. Carey's face lights up when she sees us. She comes over, and I gotta give the makeup lady props because she follows her and keeps working like a pro. Mrs. Carey shakes our hands. Diane, so nice to meet you all. You must be Star, she says to me. Don't be nervous. This will simply be a conversation between the two of us. The whole time she talks, some guy snaps photos of us. Yeah, this will be a normal conversation. Star, we were thinking we could get shots of you and Diane walking and talking around the courtyard, John says. Then we'll go up to the suite and do the conversations between you and Diane. You, Diane, and Miss Ofra. And finally, you and your parents. And after that, we'll be all set. One of the production people mics me up as John gives me a rundown of his of this walk and talk thing. It's only a transitional shot, he says. Simple stuff. Simple my butt. The first time I practically power walk. The second time, I walk like I'm in a funeral procession and can't answer Miss Carey's questions. I never realized walking and talking required so much coordination. Once we get that right, we take an elevator to the top floor. John leads us to a huge suite. Seriously, it looks like a penthouse overlooking downtown. About a dozen people are setting up cameras and lighting. Miss Oprah's there in one of her Khalil shirts and a skirt. John says they're ready for me. I sit in the love seat across from Mrs. Carey. I've never been able to cross my legs for whatever reason, so that's out of the question. They check my mic, and Mrs. Carey tells me to relax. Soon, the cameras are rolling. Millions of people around the world have heard the name Khalil Harris, she says, and they've developed their own ideas of who he was. Who was he to you? More than he may have ever realized. One of my best friends, I say. We knew each other since we were babies. If he were here, he'd point out that he was 5 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days older than me. We both chuckle at that. But that's who Khalil was. It hurts to correct myself. He was a jokester. Even when things were hard, he'd somehow find some light in it. And my voice cracks. I know it's corny, but I think he's here. His nosy ways would show up, his nosiness would force him to show up to make sure I say the right things. Probably calling me his number one fan or some annoying title that only Khalil can think of. I miss that boy. He had a big heart, I say. I know that some people call him a thug, but if you knew him, you'd know that wasn't the case at all. I'm not saying he was an angel or anything, but he wasn't a bad person. He was, I shrug. He was a kid, she nods. He was a kid. He was a kid. What do you think about people who focus on the not so good aspects of him? She asks. The fact that he may have sold drugs. Miss Oprah once said that this is how I fight, with my voice. So I fight. I hate it, I say. If people knew why he sold drugs, they wouldn't talk about him that way. Miss Carey sits up a little. Why did he sell them? I glance at Miss Oprah and she shakes her head. During all our prep meetings, she advised me not to go into details about Khalil selling drugs. She said the public doesn't have to know about that. But then I look at the camera, suddenly aware that millions of people will watch this in a few days. King may be one of them. Although his threat is loud in my head, it's not nearly as loud as what Kenya said that day in the store. Khalil would defend me. I should defend him. So I gear up to throw a punch. Khalil's mom is a drug addict, I tell Mrs. Carey. Anybody who knew him knew how much that bothered him and how much he hated drugs. He only sold them to help her out of the situation with the biggest drug dealer and gang leader in the neighborhood. Miss Oprah noticeably sighs. My parents have wide eyes. It's dry snitching, but it's snitching. Anybody who knows anything about Garden Heights will know exactly who I'm talking about. If they watch Mr. Lewis's interview, they can figure it out. But hey, since King wants to go around the neighborhood lying and saying Khalil repped his set, I can let the world know Khalil was forced to sell drugs for him. His mom's life was in danger, I say. That's the only reason he'd ever do something like that. And he wasn't a gang member. He wasn't? No, ma'am. He never wanted to fall into that type of life. But I guess I think about Devontae for some reason. I don't understand how everyone can make it seem like it's okay he got killed if he was a drug dealer and a gangbanger. A hook straight to the jaw. The media? She asks. Yes, ma'am. It seems like they always talk about what he may have said, what he may have done, what he may not have done. I didn't know a dead person could be charged in his own murder, you know? The moment I say it, I know it's my jab to the mouth. Mrs. Carey asks for my account of that night. I can't go into a lot of details. Miss Oprah told me not to, but I tell her we did everything 115 asked and never once cussed at him like his father claims. I tell her how afraid I was, how Khalil was so concerned about me that he opened the door and asked if I was okay. So he didn't make a threat on Officer Cruz's life, she questions. No, ma'am. His exact words were, Star, are you okay? That was the last thing he said, and I'm ugly crying, describing the moment when the shots rang out and Khalil looked at me for the last time. How I held him in the street and saw his eyes gloss over. I tell her 115 pointed his gun at me. He pointed his gun at you, she asks. Yes, ma'am. He kept it on me until the other officers arrived. Behind the cameras, Mama puts her hand over her mouth. Fury sparks in Daddy's eyes. Miss Oprah looks stunned. It's another jab. See? I only told Uncle Carlos that part. Mrs. Carey gives me a Kleenex and a moment to get myself together. Has the situation made you fearful of the cops? She eventually asks. I don't know, I say truthfully. My uncle's a cop. I know not all cops are bad, and they risk their lives, you know? I'm always scared for my uncle, but I'm tired of them assuming, especially when it comes to black people. You wish that more cops wouldn't make assumptions about Black people, she clarifies. Right. This all happened because he, I can't say his name, assumed that we were up to no good. Because we're Black and because of where we live, we were just two kids minding our business, you know? His assumption killed Khalil. It could have killed me. A kick straight to the ribs. If Officer Cruz were sitting here, Miss Carey says, what would you say to him? I blink several times. My mouth waters, but I swallow. No way I'm going to let myself cry to throw up from thinking about that man. If he were sitting here, I don't have enough Black Jesus in me to tell him I forgive him. Instead, I'd probably punch him straight up. But Miss Ophir says this interview is the way I fight. When you fight, you put yourself out there, not caring who you hurt or if you'll get hurt. So I throw one more blow, right at 115. I'd ask him if he wished he shot me too. Another powerful chapter. We'll stop there for today, and we'll be back with even more reading and more reflection when we continue Drop Everything and Read.